It was one of those evenings built on simple intentions. A gathering stitched together with soft laughter, familiar faces, and the faint clink of glass against glass. The kind of party that didn't try too hard, just enough candles, just enough wine, and just enough warmth in the room to make everyone loosen their shoulders. It was my birthday, not a milestone year, but a marker all the same. And she had planned most of it. The guest list, the music playlist, even the curated charcuterie board with local cheeses she insisted were worth the drive. But the one detail she was most proud of, oddly proud of, was the catering. We should hire someone this time, she'd said weeks earlier, not just pick up trays or potluck. Something real, professional. I remembered shrugging, smiling. Okay, sure, you pick. And she had. The chef she found was young, mid-30s at most. He had the kind of hair that falls in loose waves without trying. The kind of skin just sun-kissed enough to say he cooked outside more than inside. When he arrived, he wore an apron dusted in flour, and a half-smirk like he was already part of the house. He's done work for a few brands, she told me, food styling and stuff, very refined palate. She said this like it was a neutral observation, like she hadn't already tasted proof. I watched them interact in the kitchen before guests arrived. He unloaded trays and cast iron pans while she pointed toward cabinets and shelves. They moved together like choreography, like this wasn't the first kitchen they'd shared. Still, I brushed it off. I had no reason not to. She introduced him as Leo. I shook his hand. It was warm, strong, but not aggressive. He had the hands of someone who held delicate things gently. As the night unfolded, everything appeared seamless. Friends came. Laughter spilled across the hallway like perfume. The wine flowed. The playlist meandered from old-school soul to French café jazz. The dining table looked like a page torn from a magazine. Candles flickering just enough to make the flatware gleam. She floated through the room in that soft way she always had when she was hosting. Checking in on guests, topping off drinks, laughing with her whole mouth and tilting her head when someone told a joke. I caught her glancing toward the kitchen twice. Or maybe 3 times. I told myself it was habit. Just making sure the food was fine. Then, somewhere between the second course and dessert, she leaned in and whispered, "I'm going to help Leo grab a few things from the van. We forgot the mousse." I looked at her. Her hair was pinned back loosely, a strand falling toward her cheek. She smelled like jasmine and something baked. Familiar, comfortable. "Okay," I said. "Need help?" She waved it off with a smile. No, just a few things. I'll be right back." And she left. Out the sliding doors, down the stone steps, toward the catering van parked just beyond the hedges. In the narrow alley beside the garage. The van's lights were still on. Its rear doors ajar. I turned back to my guests. Clinked a glass. Made a toast about good friends and quiet joys. I didn't know it yet, but those 15 words would be the last ones I said that night without suspicion behind them. Because at that point, I still believed that love, when real, didn't need surveillance. But that night would teach me something different. Love might not need a camera, but betrayal often counts on there not being one. 20 minutes is not a long time. Not during a party, not when drinks are being poured and conversations are stacking on top of each other like cards in a shaky game. Not when you're laughing at old jokes, passing plates, nodding politely at someone's +1. But it felt longer that night. I noticed her absence somewhere around the 12-minute mark. My glance toward the kitchen, casual at first, became instinctive, then habitual, then tense. She wasn't back. Someone handed me a glass of sparkling wine. Another friend pulled me into a conversation about weekend plans and lawn renovations. But my attention never really stayed. And then, she returned. From the patio door, she entered with the quiet drama of someone who wanted to look like she hadn't been gone long. A box in hand, white, with the faint smudge of condensation. Mousse, chocolate, if I had to guess. From the way she cradled it. Her smile was soft, unhurried, the same one she used when calming guests at a delayed dinner. "Crisis averted," she said, raising the box slightly. The dessert lives. I smiled. I think I did, but I wasn't really looking at the box. I was smelling her. And the scent told a different story. It was garlic, not the light, sweet trace of roasted garlic that might linger after a good aioli. No, this was sharper, heavier, burnt, like the bottom of a pan forgotten over too much flame. Like something had scorched. It clung to her like regret. I asked it casually, a throwaway line laced with something heavier. "Did you cook something out there?" She blinked, just a half-second too long. "No," she said, "it's just the van. The smell's kind of stuck in there." He said the exhaust fan is broken. I nodded. A beat passed. She walked toward the kitchen, placed the box on the counter, and began unsealing it with gentle fingers. I could hear her humming under her breath, some tune from the playlist she'd made. The one with wine-stained jazz and clinking glass piano. But my mind didn't follow her song. Because in the hollow between her words and that scent, something had started to simmer. Something I hadn't yet named. But it had weight, and it was rising like smoke from something left too long unattended. Not in the kitchen. In me. Later that night, after the final guest's coat had disappeared into the chill and the door clicked shut behind them, a hush fell across the house. Not the comfortable silence of intimacy, but the hollow kind, the silence that lingers too long after the music stops. The kind that sounds like something missing. She had gone upstairs, her footsteps soft on the stairs, her voice trailing off behind a yawn and a casual, "I'm exhausted, don't stay up too late." I stayed, not because I had something to do, but because I wasn't ready to be in bed beside her, not with that smell still lingering on her skin, not with the image of her returning from the dark with a box of mousse and a smile a beat too measured. The living room was scattered with evidence of joy, crumpled napkins, half-empty glasses, plates with the last smudges of dessert. A wine bottle lay on its side, cork replaced but crooked. The whole scene felt like a stage after curtain call, where the props remain but the performance has ended. I sat down slowly, the cushion exhaling beneath me like it too was relieved to stop pretending. I reached for my phone, not out of suspicion, not yet, but because the weight in my chest had started to hum. Not loud, not sharp, but persistent, like the first chord of a song I didn't remember choosing. I opened the camera app. The feed was live, steady, the timestamp glowed in the upper corner. Unblinking, I scrolled backward through the hours, past the laughter and lights and clinking silverware, until I found her. There she was, stepping through the patio doors, her back to the camera, hair pulled into that loose knot she wore when she wanted to appear casual. She walked briskly, no coat, no hesitation, toward the catering van parked just beyond the edge of the garden lights. The rear doors were open, the interior dark but not completely. She climbed in, then the doors shut. At first, nothing, but 3 minutes later, the van moved, not dramatically, not jarringly, but rhythmically, a soft rock, then again, a pulse, a pattern, not the chaos of someone searching for a tray or shifting boxes. This was something else, something human. It continued for 15 minutes. A metronome of betrayal, steady as breath. And then, stillness. She exited at minute 21. Box in hand, a wisp of hair clinging to her cheek. The same box she'd set down with such purpose. The same smile she'd used when she offered me dessert. No one else appeared, not from the van, not from the shadows. Just her. I didn't zoom in, I didn't rewind, I didn't need to, because the truth didn't need a close-up. It didn't shout. It didn't declare itself. It swayed, quietly, in a catering van, and I, finally, heard it. It wasn't the noise that hurt. It was the fact that it had taken me this long to listen. There are moments in life when the loudest thing you can do is nothing. No speeches, no slammed fists, no accusatory finger pointed in the dim hallway light. Just a stillness so heavy, it makes the air in your chest feel solid. That was the silence I chose. She was upstairs. I knew by the creak of the old radiator that hummed just outside the master bedroom door. Maybe she was brushing her teeth. Maybe she had already slipped under the covers. Maybe she was lying there, convinced the night had folded in on itself without consequence. And maybe it had, for her. I didn't go up. Instead, I slipped into a pair of house shoes and stepped out the back door. The air was crisp, the kind of cold that isn't yet winter, but promises it's coming. The backyard was dimly lit. The string lights above the patio still glowing faint amber. They flickered like the tail end of something celebratory, but half-heartedly. I made my way toward the circuit panel, the auxiliary box we'd installed last year when we upgraded the house security system. She had rolled her eyes about it at the time. "Do we really need that much surveillance?" she'd said. Apparently, no. The latch was stiff, but it opened with a reluctant groan. I stood there a moment, hand hovering over the labeled switches. I found the one marked Camera Master, back EXT. I pulled it down. And just like that, the recording stopped, not because I had anything to hide, but because I didn't want to watch anymore. I didn't need to catalog more betrayal, to trap it in pixels and timecodes. I didn't need angles or clarity or proof. Proof is for arguments. I wasn't interested in arguing. I needed an ending, not with punctuation, with breath. And the pulling of that switch was, for me, an exhale. The system beeped softly as it disengaged. One final automated blink, and then silence. I looked up at the sky. No stars, just low, indifferent clouds, the kind that don't cry. They just hang there, heavy, gray, watching. I went back inside, closed the door behind me gently, locked it. Then I stood there in the kitchen, hands in my pockets, hearing nothing but the slow tick of the wall clock and the quiet whir of the refrigerator. Sometimes, it's not what you say that declares your decision. It's what you no longer need to see. The following morning arrived without ceremony. No birdsong, no slant of golden light across the hardwood. Just the thud of silence settling back into the walls. She was already downstairs when I came into the kitchen, dressed in her robe, hair swept up carelessly, humming to herself like nothing in the world was out of place. The mousse, the very same dessert that had made its quiet entrance the night before, sat proudly on a serving plate in the middle of the table. 2 small bowls had been prepared, one for her, one for me. She looked up and smiled as if we were resuming a conversation only momentarily paused. "It's still good," she said, nodding toward the plate. "Want some before I clean up?" I sat down, not out of hunger, out of observation, a man watching the aftermath of a performance and trying to figure out whether the actor remembered her lines. She scooped a portion of the mousse, rich and dark, into her own bowl, and then extended the spoon toward me. "Just try a bite," she said softly, "you'll love it." I didn't reach for the spoon. I just looked at her, then at the plate, and I smiled, small, restrained, a curve of the lips without the echo of joy. Because it wasn't the mousse that made my stomach turn. Not the sweetness, not the chocolate, not even the faint trace of garlic still clinging to her skin. Like a scent that didn't know when it had outstayed its welcome. It was what the scent had become, a message. A quiet, pungent, invisible postscript to a night rewritten without my consent. The truth hadn't come with shouting. It hadn't arrived in broken dishes or slammed doors. It had walked back into the house wrapped in vanilla mousse and burnt garlic. She took a bite, watching me over the rim of her bowl. I kept my hands folded in my lap. "I'm okay," I said, "maybe later." But later never came, because some dishes you don't just refuse with your mouth. You refuse with your memory. And some bites never reach your tongue because they've already left a taste in your heart. Morning arrived again, this time without the pretense of peace. The light outside was a muted gray, the kind that slips through window blinds like an apology. It didn't illuminate much, but it didn't need to. I had seen everything already. I sat at the small writing desk in our bedroom, one she always called my corner of clarity. It was an old piece, inherited from my father, scratched and uneven, but it had held every thought I hadn't dared to say aloud for years. I opened the drawer, pulled out the leather-bound notebook with the frayed spine and pages dog-eared from too much rewriting. I turned to a fresh page and wrote in block letters. "Intuition is a gift, not a curse." It speaks when the truth hasn't found its voice yet. Then I put the pen down. And I knew that was the final sentence in the story of us. I packed light, not out of haste, but because clarity doesn't weigh much. A few changes of clothes. My journal, my camera, ironically, the one that had captured so many staged smiles over the years. I left the photos, let her keep them. Sometimes, keeping the image is punishment enough. I didn't go upstairs. She might still be in bed. Or she might be in the shower, rehearsing small talk for a day she thought would start the same as every other. But I had already had my conversation, with the footage, with the silence, with the garlic-scented shadows. I walked through the house like someone stepping out of a museum. Everything looked intact, but I knew which painting was a forgery. As I passed the kitchen, I glanced once more at the empty bowls. The dessert we never shared. The faint smell still lingered, not sweet, not savory, just burnt, just final. I didn't leave a note. There are moments when even goodbye feels performative. Sometimes, pulling the plug on the camera system is the same as pulling the plug on the story. I stepped into the car and let the door shut gently behind me. The engine started with a low hum, and the driveway stretched out in front of me like an unwritten paragraph. In the rearview mirror, the house stood still, its windows quiet, its lights unblinking. I didn't look back long. Because moving forward isn't about anger. It's about knowing when a chapter has ended, and refusing to rewrite it. As I turned onto the main road, a strange calmness wrapped around me. The scent of garlic still flickered in my memory. Not sharp, not poisonous, just scorched. And that was enough.